Hey, welcome to Financial Revelations. I am David Zafransky, your host. As you know, you can hear me every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on WCRF in Cleveland, 103.3. It's a Moody Radio station, so if you have a smartphone, which there's only one person I know, Gary, that doesn't have a smartphone, you can download their app and hear me from anywhere. And listen to old stuff, too. Below me is scrolling the numbers, the contact information. Reach out to us. I want to announce that we're going to have a question contest. Yes, a question contest. And for listeners of the podcast, whoever sends in my favorite question is going to win a $50 Visa card that we'll mail out to you, so we'll need your address. So starting today and going for the next week, mail in your listener questions, email them, and that contact information is below me. And if yours is the favorite, you're going to win $50 Visa card that the office will mail out to you, and you could do whatever you want with it. So good luck. Ask good questions. I love to answer listener questions. We got a couple of really good ones. One of them probably would have won. Alas, I can't use it because I'm going to talk about it today. So going forward for the next week, listener questions, $50 gift certificate. I love hearing from people. Also, I do get a lot of questions about how can you give to the mission trips that we go on to the middle of the Amazon. nativosusa.org, and Corey's going to put that up, nativosusa.org. There's a button right on the homepage, support the next missions trip. Any amount helps because our money goes 5-1 almost in Brazil right now. And there's a lot of things that we're doing. We are continuing to dig wells, but we're helping the church there with building projects in town and things like that. So I can tell you this, 100% of whatever you donate goes to the mission. There's no administrative fee or anything like that. The website was set up with donations that really the board of directors did, and there's no fee coming out. There's no accounting fees or anything. 100% of what you give goes to the mission. Not many 501c3s can say that. nativosusa.org can. Hey, there's a big meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming this next week, and it's the Federal Reserve, and they bring in a lot of people. There's a lot of academia there. There's a lot of people at the higher end of finance there. I don't get invited. I don't know why. Maybe they don't have my address correct, but I haven't been invited yet. But it's a pretty big meeting, and the market hates this meeting. The market hates it. There won't be an interest rate hike out of this meeting, but there's a lot of talking that comes out of this meeting. And the Bible says when words are many, sin is not absent. I adapt that just a little bit. My version is when the Fed speaks a lot, stupidity is not far away. And this is kind of a place where a lot of the Fed governors will be answering questions. And sometimes, not always, but most times, a lot of confusion is created because not all the Fed governors think alike. And some are voting, some are not voting. Neo Kashkari last week talked for a little bit, just a little bit, and roiled the markets. And I think that's why the stock market in general and people in my business really hate Jackson Hole meeting. It's just a lot of talk comes out of it, and talk is cheap. We want to see action. I still am a pretty strong believer in that there's 2 more rate hikes before the Fed ends their cycle, unless the data proves otherwise if inflation were to accelerate again, which I think it's going to do in September because fuel prices are up pretty significantly in between these meetings. Oil prices were up 14 to 16 bucks a barrel. And that goes right into CPI. It's, they do a couple of different measures. They do core minus food and energy. Well, it just so happens that a lot of us eat food. And so if the price of food is up, it's inflationary. It matters. And so they'll back those out and to try and make the number look better. And everybody does this, by the way. It's not just this administration, which seems to be specially equipped at stupidity when it comes to economic policy. But every measure of inflation is like this, where they include food and energy and they X food and energy just to give you kind of they say, well, food and energy is volatile. Well, yeah, but we use it, so the number's important. So next week I would expect some volatility to the downside mostly. When the Fed speaks a lot, it's usually to the downside, unless they were to come out and say, we're done, which I don't think they're going to do, because I don't think they're done. And that's okay, but we are having to get used to this new rate regime. And I do think it's very possible. In fact, my base case scenario still is a mild recession next year in the midst of the presidential election cycle, with rate cuts coming probably after the election or right about the election. But it's going to be a tough tape next year. You're starting to see this lag effect. We've talked about the lag effect of the Fed, where they raise rates and it just takes a while for the economy to absorb these. And as they get higher, Yellow Trucking went out of business because their credit line had to be renewed from about 1.75% to like 7.5%. They couldn't make that payment. Well, they're the weakest of the group. They're the weakest in the market, the first ones to fall. But there's other companies that this is happening to, and that's the lag effect of the Fed that's highly underappreciated by 99% of the people. But because my training is in economics, I understand the lag effect of the Fed, and it's real. And so as companies get their credit facility or their credit line renewed, banks aren't going to renew it at 2%. They're going to renew it at 7%. Well, that's an order of magnitude in cost to a company. What are we going to cut? Maybe the company, maybe some people. And that's going to start happening more and more and more. And I think that's why the Fed took off June. I think it was a mistake. They should have just raised. I think they have 2 more rate hikes before it's all said and done. So I don't want to just talk about the Fed. One of the questions I got in between now and last week was about tech stocks. We have talked about tech stocks a lot, and I heard somebody that I have a high respect for, a guy named Dan Ives. Not only do I like his opinion, but his clothes are really nice too. I bugged him a little bit about who his tailor is, and he never answers me about it. He's answered me a couple other messages that I've sent, but never, hey, who's your tailor? I want to get that jacket. I wouldn't tell him either if he was asking me, so I get it. But his opinion was, and I've long thought this, that artificial intelligence, or AI, that we hear a lot about right now, we don't really know where it's going. We just know this: it's going to have a powerful impact on what we're doing. And so the big companies that we know of, like Amazon, Facebook, now called Meta, Apple, Palantir, Alphabet, there's a lot that I'm not mentioning too. So I don't want you to think those are the only ones. But AI is going to dramatically affect these companies and what they do and how we interface with them. It's very similar to 1995 when the internet was just... there's this guy, he's kind of a liberal economist. I don't even want to give his name, but every time I hear him, I think, oh boy, here, put on the boots, it's about to get thick in here. He said in 1995 he didn't think the internet was going to really catch on. We still listen to him. That's it was so obvious that this was dramatic. It was a sea change, a revolution of information, and it still is. It still is. He's the guy, so he's like an environmentalist. Environmentalists have been predicting doom and gloom and catastrophe since 1890. And I'm not kidding, 1890. Not one of their predictions has ever come true, but people still listen to them. How dumb can you be? They're wrong about everything. The polar ice caps, the sea levels, these powerful environmentalists and wacko environmentalists buy houses along the ocean. If the sea levels were rising, do you think they'd buy up the hill a little bit? Just a thought. So anyway, these tech stocks, somebody asked me, well, should everybody own these? And the answer is, probably not everybody should own them. I have clients that don't own them. Why? Well, they might not have as much time. They might have desire to have less risky stocks in their portfolio, and their personal risk tolerance might not be that high. And it's not a bad time to own some bonds. I think it's actually going to get better before it gets worse. But if you have long enough, if you have a long enough time horizon, if you have a high enough risk tolerance, if you're willing to accept some equities that are going to be very volatile in your portfolio as part of your holdings, maybe. But I think, I've often talked about the pillars of financial planning, and they are, you got to have savings and emergency fund. You got to have your consumer debt paid down to zero, and every month be paying your credit card off. I don't want you to run credit card debt. It's a drain. It's an unnecessary drain on your finances. You got to have a budget. It doesn't have to be ground in stone, but we've got to know where your money's going. We've got to know. You got to plan. You got to protect your family. So if somebody said, well, I have $1,000 to invest and I want to put it in a mutual fund, but you had young kids and a stay-at-home spouse and no insurance, I'm going to say, well, you shouldn't invest. You should buy insurance, because if something happened to you, what happens to your kids and your stay-at-home spouse? Notice I didn't say a stay-at-home mom. Could be a stay-at-home dad. I would have gone crazy. I don't know how my wife did it. She was a teacher, just retired. I would spend 5 minutes in her classroom, and I think, I got to get out of here. I got to go take a nap on my couch. You got to have protection, and you got to have a plan. Okay, that's a pillar of financial planning. The plan. 5 pillars of financial planning that we talk about. You must have a plan. Savings plan, an emergency fund plan, a plan for the future, maybe a college. So these are all things that you have to do, and then you can invest. I have people come to me, not so frequently anymore, but they do come to me, and they'll make an average salary, whatever that is. They'll have $30,000, $40,000 in credit card debt and want to invest, and I will not take their money. I've had people get mad at me in my office and say, well, I'm going to go someplace else. I said, well, have a nice day. I can't take your money. It would be malpractice to take that money. I could guarantee you 20% rate of return if you just pay your credit cards off. And so remember, we are having a contest for the best questions. $50 gift certificate will come to you. In fact, I'm going to do it for 2 weeks. Okay, I'm going to give people a little bit more time. So not next week, but the following week we'll announce a winner. I'm so patriotic that I just wanted to mention this, because this actually happened the other day. I got up, I was drinking my coffee. I get up before sunrise and I do a little research, just things that I've always done. And I look out, I live on the lake, and I look out on Lake Erie, and there's 3 eagles on my beach. Even the eagles know I'm a patriot. That's how patriotic I am. Even eagles, bald eagles, congregate on my beach. Like, this is so beautiful. How would they know? So we're going to do the giveaway. It's going to last 2 weeks, $50 gift certificate. I'll mail it to you. You can pick it up if you want. I love meeting people. So I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot where even the eagles are eating on my beach, and the voice you can trust.